Viewers, it's been 48 hours since the war in Gaza stopped after the signing of the historic peace pact at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Since then, Hamas has finally released 20 of the hostages who were alive. 8 of the total 28 who were dead have also been released, who were in the captivity of Hamas. Israel has also released about 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. This was part of the deal that was struck. But will this ceasefire actually hold and make way for lasting peace? Now, already there are reports of Hamas taking control of large parts of the urban areas after Israeli forces vacated them and retreated. And that also means that there have been reports of public executions that have come to light of ordinary Palestinians done by Hamas themselves. Now, whether this will lead to lasting peace, whether the optics of Sharm el-Sheikh will actually ensure a long-term formula will finally happen, and more importantly, what happens to Hamas, which has quickly already tried to seize the opportunity of taking control of the entire area. Those are some of the questions that we'll put forth to Israeli Ambassador Mr. Reuven Azar, who's speaking exclusively to NDTV and joins me here in the studio. Ambassador Azar, thank you so much for joining me.
For the invitation.
Let me first start by congratulating you, congratulating every Israeli and in fact the world. At the end, the fact that there is a ceasefire in place, the hostilities have ended, hostages have returned, is a huge moment for the entire region, for the world. Let me ask you first, any calculations you've done in terms of how soon those who are dead, their bodies will be returned by Hamas to Israel?
Well, Gauri, first of all, indeed this is a moment of joy in Israel. You've seen the pictures. It seems like a huge rock has been out of our chest with the return of the living hostages. However, you're right. Hamas hasn't met the commitment of releasing all the murdered hostages. We have 28. Out of them, we are still having 21 in Hamas captivity.
4 plus 4 is what they've released, right?
Yes, but one of them wasn't an Israeli hostage. So we have at this point, out of the 28, only 7 that were returned to Israel. This is extremely important for us, for the families, to give them closure.
Yes.
And this is a commitment that Hamas gave. This is an amazing moment in our region, Gauri, because there is really an opportunity for peace. And there is a path that is not only has gotten our agreement, the agreement of the United States, but also the agreement of the entire international community. 20 countries, the Sharm el-Sheikh supporting this. They all agree that Hamas has to renounce power in the Gaza Strip. And Hamas actually committed to renouncing power. But what they are doing on the ground is something else. As you mentioned, they are murdering people at point blank, and they are trying to resume power. If they continue in that path, and if they don't implement this plan, this 20-point plan devised by the Americans, I think it's going to be a huge opportunity missed. We want this opportunity to succeed. Israel is committed and is actually implementing its part because we need this peace. We need quiet. We need reconstruction. And I think that the world is waiting to see something positive coming out of this. We are going to give it a chance.
And something long-term. Right now what it is an important ceasefire. For it to actually take shape in that 20-point formula, the most contentious part of it is that Hamas needs to let go of arms. It should not be able to arm itself and be part of the larger formula. But as things stand right now, there are sporadic instances of violence. There are large reports coming in and multiple reports coming in of public executions taking place. Where things stand right now then?
Well, the good news is that the ceasefire generally is holding. There have been some incidents because apparently some people were trying to infiltrate areas that are under Israeli control. And because of this savagery that Hamas is actually conducting against their own people, we hope that stops. We want Hamas to fulfill their commitment, not only to us, to the Arab and Muslim nations. These parties, they should put pressure on Hamas. When we look in retrospect, what brought us into this moment in which the hostages became a burden for Hamas? It came because of our military pressure. It came because of the efforts of the United States and the efforts of the mediators that finally have decided to put pressure on Hamas. This brought results, and if we want to see results in the future, meaning we want to see the implementation of the 20-point plan, we have to have pressure from the Arab Muslim world on Hamas.
So Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the main set of mediators, you think they will be the ones putting pressure on Hamas to ensure that they don't arm themselves again?
We certainly hope so, because there is a peaceful path out of this that is agreed. We wouldn't like to go back to unilateral action. We don't want to go back to war. I think that this is the expectation that was very clearly put by President Trump. We respect that, and Israelis are also, they also want to go back to their normal lives.
Donald Trump just said aboard Air Force One, when asked about exactly what we are talking, which is of public executions, which is Hamas rearming itself, and the fact that it has not accepted that condition of the peace point formula, 20-point formula, Donald Trump has said that if they don't disarm, we will disarm them, and it will happen quickly and perhaps violently. The cycle of violence that we are all hoping will end in the region, unfortunately, we are still some time away from actual peace taking shape.
Well, it's not a cycle of violence. It's an attack that took place by Hamas 2 years ago, and it was an attempt of Israel to defend itself. I think that we conducted ourselves in a responsible way, and we have stopped, we were ready to stop hostilities a long time ago.
Yes.
What we wanted...
Not for the hostages. They were not being released.
Not only that, what we wanted is not only to get the hostages, but to make sure that the 7th of October cannot happen again. And we won't compromise on that. So there are two ways of doing that. Now there is a very clear diplomatic way. And, Palestinians have missed so many opportunities in the past when we offered them peace and we brought to the table very generous proposals that they have rejected. So we don't want that to happen again. We hope it doesn't happen again. But if Hamas challenges the 20-point plan that they have agreed to, then they will have to face the consequences. And that's what President Trump has said.
If the war objective was that there should not be another 7th of October, that Hamas should not rearm itself and should not be in a position to attack Israel, the fact that they are doing so just hours after withdrawal of Israeli forces, they've taken over large chunks of urban areas, there are executions happening, they're also now hunting down what they say are Israeli sympathizers, for want of a better phrase. Then what are we talking about? Your core war objective hasn't been fulfilled. Does that mean that Israel would once again look at military options?
Well, we are not seeking military options. We're seeking diplomatic options. And we hope the diplomatic options work. We believe that a lot more can be done on the diplomacy front in order to keep this ceasefire, in order to implement the 20-point plan. We are ready to engage in that with all the regional partners, with partners around the world. We want to achieve a situation in which Israel will be in peace, in which Gaza can be reconstructed. Nobody in the world is going to invest in reconstructing Gaza if Hamas stays in power. So unless they understand that, unless they cede their attempt to take control of the situation, the consequences for them will be dire.
What about the most difficult set of conversations and questions, which is around the role, structure, form that the Gaza Authority will take? Who will get to govern it? What about the two-nation formula? There is already concern globally that it didn't find feature in the peace summit, the statement that came out. But unless that is accepted, the two-nation formula, there will never be peace. So how soon will these difficult and thorny set of questions really be addressed?
Well, there's a lot of work ahead of us. The American vision was put forward back in 2020 when there was a clear vision on the American side, the Trump administration, for Palestinian self-rule that entails reforms. So we want to see not only Hamas removed from power, we want to see a revitalized and reformed Palestinian Authority that will no longer educate their children just to kill Jews and to destroy the state of Israel, that will be accountable to the Palestinian people. There is an idea that was adopted by the entire international community of having not only support, but also having supervision on this process from the part of the international community. So all these details have to be elaborated in negotiations, And we are giving a chance to negotiations, Gauri. And I hope they succeed.
Ambassador Azar, I'm asking you this is because the longevity of the ceasefire rests on these answers. Right. Unless these answers are there, the ceasefire may not actually hold for a long period of time, as many would want it. The aspiration is there. The fact that there were 20 world leaders at the summit is indicative of a global consensus towards peace.
No,
but these questions...
but look, we are optimistic at this point because of two reasons. First of all, is because there's a lot of backwind for this program. And the second is because there's a lot of pressures. There are a lot of pressures within the Palestinian constituency to end this war. So there is a choice for the Palestinians to make. The challenge is whether Hamas is going to recognize that, is going to meet the demands of the international community, is going to be responsible enough to cede power and allow a technocratic and civilian administration to come and seize power. It's difficult to imagine given what we've seen in the last 2 years, but also it's not impossible.
The scale of destruction that has happened in Gaza warrants immediate focus on reconstruction, rebuilding. If Hamas becomes a core issue regarding which no movement will take place, whether it's reconstruction or rebuilding, does that mean the people of Gaza Strip and Gaza will completely suffer once again?
Absolutely, and they're already suffering.
But they're already suffering, so how do you move forward then?
Exactly. I think that we have to work together. We've seen in this deal and in this agreement of Hamas to release the hostages that things that were unthinkable are possible, and we have to stay focused, Gauri. We can succeed.
But for humanitarian concerns, do you think it's important to also allow reconstruction, rebuilding, even though you're saying that the continuing of Hamas is a deal breaker, but reconstruction, rebuilding of Gaza is equally important?
Yes, but nobody is going to reconstruct Gaza if Hamas stays in power, because the international community has had enough from this. They have been financing reconstruction in Gaza, and all this reconstruction effort was taken hostage by Hamas in the past to launch a war against Israel. So people have learned from the past. They are not going to repeat the past mistakes, and therefore it is very clear that while people are eager to reconstruct Gaza, there are certain things that they are not going to compromise about, including the role of Hamas.
What about the immediate set of priorities for the Israeli government? There's been a lot of pressure that the government has also faced from several wings within several factions within itself. What about some of those concerns? Will that now be addressed? There are also legitimate criticism that has come in that maybe it's time for the Israeli government to also now make way for the two-nation formula, something that Prime Minister Netanyahu hasn't endorsed so far. What about the immediate priorities of the Israeli government?
Well, we don't have pressures from within because Israelis have seen what were the results of Israeli risk-taking when it comes to ceding power to Palestinians prematurely. So now I think Israelis are pretty convinced, and it's quite consensual in Israel, that before we cede power, we'll have to see some processes happening on the other side. Now, there has been some criticism from the right because a lot of people were disappointed that Israel had to release so many murderers and killers of civilians, 250 convicts that have murdered multiple citizens in Israel have been released. But despite the fact that this happened, the right-wing parties in the government that were against this, that voted against it, remained in the government. It means that there is consensus in Israel that we have to give this 20-point plan a chance. And that's exactly what the Israeli government is doing.
Final question, Ambassador Azar, which I want to ask you this, is that from what it looks like, this stage 1, stage 2, these many points, you're looking at a very long-term sort of a roadmap. Can that actually happen in a region that is so fluid, where there's so much of uncertainty, so many moving parts? And does that mean that this long-term roadmap risks falling apart sooner than we know?
Well, we have to be realistic and do not rely on shortcuts. We've seen, unfortunately, some of the countries, especially in Europe, like France and Britain, and also Canada decided to reward Hamas by recognizing the Palestinian state. This didn't bring peace. On the contrary, this hindered the negotiations to achieve the ceasefire and release the hostages. What we have to do is to build on solid foundations.
But the nationhood of Palestine is something that is a demand, right? I mean, the fact that it should not be Hamas governing it.
There are different demands by different parties. The question is how you create a realistic path that will, as I said, bring the solid foundations for a solution that is long-term. As long as we continue to see education for destruction of the state of Israel, as long as we continue to see eulogization of terrorists, as long as we continue to see radicals who are taking charge and killing their own people, we are going to be farther away from a vision of peace. And therefore, we have to build it step by step. We have to be patient, but if we build it right, then there is a chance that it will hold. And we have to give it an opportunity.
That's a positive note to end this, with a lot of hope and prospect of peace, even as right now, for the interim, there is a ceasefire in place, and the world is hoping that this translates into something that's long-term and not just immediate. Thank you so much, Ambassador Azar.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV.
Thank you.